And now Michelob hopes you enjoy Profiles in Rock.
Every place I lived had a basement. It was the only place I could hide.
Ric Ocasek talks about a group he helped form in 1977.
Rather than set up equipment in the living room or to play with, yourself, I, play in basements. And the Cars practiced in the smallest basement you could imagine, where we actually had no room to even stand up. All the equipment was in a circle. David's drums took up half the room. And the walls were all stone. You could play at 0 volume and it was too loud. Like you never knew what was going on in the song. You'd just start to play it and you'd hear a wall of noise, sounds, and then you'd finish it. And you never knew what you had until you got out on the stage, because you could never, decipher one instrument from another. It was very ridiculous, but it was a lot of fun. We used to get really hypnotized down there and spend hours and hours every day, just going in there and playing and playing and playing, and we just sort of, rehearsed it all and then said, hey, we're going to go out.
Hi, I'm Terry McGovern with the unusual story of a band that hit the radio before they'd even made a record. Profiles in Rock, The Cars.
Let the good times roll. Let them rock you around. Let them roll.
The Cars came out of a long-time musical friendship between writer-guitarist Ric Ocasek and singer-bass player Ben Orr. In 1977, they were living in Boston when they got together with David Robinson, Elliot Easton, and Greg Hawkes to form the Cars. Most new bands find their way to the top by getting a record contract and then radio airplay. But as Ric Ocasek recalls, the Cars did it the other way around.
A couple weeks after we had been playing out, I don't think it was before we played out, but I think it was like a couple weeks after, we went into the studio and did a live 2-track tape where we laid down our whole repertoire on tape. And with those tapes, we pulled out just what I needed in You're All I've Got Tonight and a couple songs. And we took them to the radio stations, and it seems to me like the next day they were on the radio getting played. And, it started off a little bit, and it started off to be getting a lot of radio play. You'd start to hear it instead of once a day, you'd start hearing it twice, and then you start hearing it like all the time. And you'd start hearing it on other radio stations. I don't know where they got the tapes, but we started hearing them on other radio stations as well. From what I understand, it just became the most requested songs, on the whole playlist, despite all the albums that were released and all the record companies that were trying to get their product played. This was still coming out on top. I think it inspired record companies to come around.
It didn't take long. Within a few short months, Elektra Records signed the Cars and flew them to England to make their first album.
Since it was a brand new band and it was also a brand new kind of music, it took a while, for it to get picked up around the country on radio stations. It wasn't like we were an established act. We had to go through that whole thing where, radio stations were totally into just playing established bands at the time. And it took a while, for them to put a new band on their playlist. Just a new band out of nowhere.
But it didn't take that long. The first album, just called The Cars, quickly made the band one of the hottest new groups of 1978. And a lot of it had to do with their major writer, Ric Ocasek. We'll hear more from The Cars when Profiles in Rock continues. Profiles in Rock continues with the man who writes the music for The Cars, the group's rhythm guitarist and co-founder, Ric Ocasek.
When I write a song, I put it down on cassette, and it's usually just guitar and my voice. It's in pretty rough form. It's the verses and the choruses and all that are in the right places, you know, and we have to take it and first decide if everybody is inspired to do it, and then if everybody is, I mean, we started from scratch, you know, we just sit there and do it, and I think that's about the most fun. One of the most fun things that we do is do that, because when you're finished, you've got something that was never there before. It was like the sketch, and then we all add the color to the sketch. You really don't know what it's going to sound like, you know, before you go in. I mean, you might have some ideas about some specific kind of mood you want to have the song, just some little specific things, but it's really a thrill when it's all finished and you take the practice tapes home and you listen to it and you hear finished songs. It's pretty thrilling to hear them.
One of the tracks from The Cars, released in May of 1978. Like all the songs on the album, it was written by Ric Ocasek.
You see, I can't stop the words from coming once they do. So when I write songs, usually I get into a mood where I'm just in the mood to write. I can tell because I start writing a lot of words down, you know. I mean, sometimes I couldn't sit down and write a song if I wanted to. You know, I just won't, there's nothing there, you know, to write about. I'm just not inspired by anything that's going on. And sometimes, you know, I'll sit down and write 15 at a time, you know, on a binge of maybe a 2-week period of time, you know, where I'll just write. And, you know, once I get in those moods, then I turn out songs, you know. I don't know what they're going to be about, you know, I don't know what they're going to sound like. It just depends on how they come out, you know. I don't usually go back on anything I've written and change it. I don't like to develop things in pieces. I'm more into the spontaneity and to do it, like I said, you know, until it's finished and then go on to the next.
She shadows me in the mirror. She never leaves on the light.
All mixed up. The Cars from their first album. Again, the group's writer, Ric Ocasek.
Ultimately, when you finish writing the song, it's not so much individual words that are in the song. It's, you know, the total picture that you get after it's finished, you know, the feeling that you get from a song. I mean, you don't go around singing and analyzing like every line in a song, but you do think of a song in a whole term, and when you hear it, you get a certain feeling from the result of the whole thing. And once you mix the colors together, you know, whether you use red and green and a little white to lighten it up is irrelevant compared to the color that you've got as an end result, you know, which might be the most beautiful color, you know, that you've ever seen. But you don't know which colors you put into it to make it that way. The reason I don't ever, you know, I can't say what I write about. It just seems obvious to me, you know, what the songs are about and the kinds of, you know, people or things that I write about. I'm not trying to hide anything or be cute, you know, with lyrics. You know, some of them are funny. Some people take them seriously, you know. I don't think you can take anything like that too serious, you know. I don't think there's any place for seriousness in music anyway, on a musician's level or on a performance or any kind of level. I mean, what serious musician? Is a serious musician somebody who is trying to be technically perfect? Is it somebody who sits down and plays all of Beethoven's songs from 11 o'clock in the morning to 11 o'clock at night without stopping, you know, and never missing a note? To me, that might be serious musicianship, you know. But, you know, I mean, there's enough serious things going on in the world, you know, without having to have music be one of them.
If music isn't meant to be serious, then what is it supposed to be? We'll hear what Ric Ocasek thinks when Profiles in Rock continues. Hi, I'm Terry McGovern, and this week on Profiles in Rock, Michelob presents The Cars.
I don't mind you coming here.
They sort of root for you when you're on your way up, but then once you're up there, there's no reason to root anymore. You know, I mean, you might as well root for somebody else, you know. I mean, you always root for the underdog, for the guy who's climbing. I think once people get what they want, they don't want it anymore.
I guess you're just what I needed. Just what I needed. I needed someone to please.
The Cars, this week on Profiles in Rock, brought to you by Michelob. Hi, I'm Terry McGovern, and this week on Profiles in Rock, Michelob presents the words and music of The Cars.
I'm not trying to hide anything or be cute with lyrics. You know, some of them are funny, some people take them seriously, you know. I don't think there's any place for seriousness in music anyway.
I like the night, baby. She says, let's go.
The Cars, this week on Profiles in Rock, brought to you by Michelob. Profiles in Rock continues with The Cars' second album, Candio. The Cars' music is rooted in good time rock and roll and an attitude that music should be fun. Again, Ric Ocasek.
You know, it's supposed to be an outlet. You know, it makes people feel different things, and it shouldn't make somebody feel serious or depressed or anything like that, you know. I know there's different ways to look at it as far as serious musicians and all that. I don't consider myself a musician at all. I don't look forward to having people say, wow, you're a wonderful musician. I'm a musician. I hold a guitar, I play chords, I make up chords, you know, I present, you know, or sing the songs or play them in a way that it excites me to do it. But I don't care if I make a mistake, you know, on stage, or if I fall on my face, you know, I could care less, you know. I'm not worried about it. You know, I'm not worried about what 10,000 people are going to think if I blow it, you know. I mean, so what, you know?
The music of Ric Ocasek, David Robinson, Greg Hawkes, Elliot Easton, and Ben Orr. The Cars. All the songs on their second album, Candio, like those on the first, were written by Ric Ocasek, who looks on music as a very personal kind of experience.
You know, when you go around all day singing a song in your head, it's sort of like a meditative thing. A thing that takes the place of other things that are in your head to relax you or to get your mind off, you know, other things that are going on. You find yourself singing a song in your head, and it's sort of taking the place of other things. And I always thought that you should be able to wake up in the morning and the first thing that should come in your head is a song, and you should be singing it all day. You know, sometimes you even find yourself singing songs in your head that you hate. I don't know if you've ever noticed. I mean, I do. Some of the worst AM songs you can't stand, you just keep singing it, you know. You don't know why, but I think that's, you know, part of what music does to people. And
Since I Held You, from Candio. The Cars came to the public right off the street. They started in underground clubs around Boston, and then 2 local radio stations aired tapes of their music, even before they'd made a record. The Cars were the underdogs, but then came success, and some changed attitudes. Ric Ocasek talks about critics, radio, new bands, and the record companies, when Profiles in Rock continues. Profiles in Rock, The Cars.
they sort of root for you when you're on your way up, but then once you're up there, there's no reason to root anymore. You know, I mean, you might as well root for somebody else, you know. I mean, you always root for the underdog, for the guy who's climbing. You know, I mean, I think once people get what they want, they don't want it anymore. We're not too concerned with like what they say about us. You know, I mean, we haven't changed our ideals or anything.
One too many times I fell over you to keep waiting for you. It's all I can do. It's all I can do.
The Cars from Candio. One of the things the band's writer and co-founder, Ric Ocasek, feels most strongly about is new music and the important function radio can perform in bringing it to the public.
At least one of the services radio could do for each city would be to play music that's around, new music, or, you know, local bands help out their own cities, help out their own bands in each city. You know, I mean, you can't play every tape from every band that you get, but you can take an hour a week and listen to some tapes from local bands and inspire, you know, have some played on the air, which would in turn inspire, you know, bands to at least shoot for the goal of getting radio play, which would probably make a lot of bands form, and, you know, I think it could inspire a lot of new bands and a lot of new kinds of music. I don't see any reason why we should just have to, you know, stick to already established band to have the record company pull to get the radio things played, you know, when, I mean, I just think it would be exciting if we could get some local bands, you know, get some bands off the street, see what's really going on in music and not what the record companies are reacting on. Whatever happened to the fun of having, you know, discovered new bands in your own city, or, you know, to make a small local band a national sort of entity by, you know, it's the old thing, it's almost like Hollywood, where you used to walk down the street and say, or meet somebody in a drugstore and say, I can make you a star, sort of thing. You know, that sort of thing for rock bands, if they don't have that incentive, you know, to think that they can get somewhere in music, it's very disheartening, and people don't try, and if new bands aren't going to surface, the music scene thusly is not going to change.
Profiles in Rock, The Cars, was written and produced by Bert Kleinman, with production created by Ron Harris. This program is distributed worldwide by Watermark. Executive producer Tom Rounds. I'm Terry McGovern, inviting you to join me again next week for Profiles in Rock. Michelob hopes you've enjoyed Profiles in Rock. Weekends were made for Michelob.